as it is the weird, wild MMA career that's been Trevin Jones, the Trevin Jones experience continues on this weekend. Coming up, he's set to take on, welcome to the UFC, the Snow Leopard, Javid Basharat, a very impressive fighter out of London Shoot Fighters, a great Taekwondo background, and we'll have a lot to say about Javid Basharat, who was born in Afghanistan, but really got his mojo and got going over in England. But Matt, when it comes to Trevin Jones, and I set things up that way, before he came into the UFC, what the heck were your impressions of Trevin Jones?
I had some question marks coming into the UFC because you just didn't really know where you were going to get. You knew he had big power. He did have a salty record, which is always something you have to worry about. But he did kind of prove that he was more, at least early on, in the Vicente Luque category of I have a bad record than of any other example of a guy who just has a bad record fighting a lot of cans, because Trevin Jones had a UFC debut similar to like Chaos Williams, I think it's fair to say. Another guy who, let's be honest, we both weren't entirely sold on, and then he shows up just flatlining people, and that's a great way to get a lot of fans excited. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't want to say I was the conductor of the Trevin Jones hype train, but I was saying he was going to go on to have an incredibly successful career, and he still could, but we have seen him falter a little bit as of late.
And this is it. I mean, for Trevin Jones, he's taking on Timur Valiev. Valiev was about a minus 600 favorite in that fight. He has a great first round, and then in the second round, he kind of gets caught with that power jab. I guess you could call it like a cross that Jones is able to land. He follows it up, finishes that fight, tested positive for the weed, and so it's a no contest. Now, in Nevada, if I'm not mistaken, you'd still get a win on that one today. But Trevin Jones, it's a no contest on his record, no takesies, backsies. So his next time out, he takes on Mario Bautista, and I thought, hey, Mario's a hell of a fighter. Mario's going to win that fighter. Nope, Trevin Jones flying into a knockout. But again, I say weird wild because he's fought for all these different promotions. It's not every day you get a fighter from Guam competing in the UFC. Roque Martinez is one in and around the same time as Jones. But again, like there's a handful of fighters from Guam in the UFC. And then after Bautista, this is the biggest part out of Trevin Jones' career. Look at all the fights that have been scratched. He gets Bautista because he was supposed to fight Randy Costa. Then he's supposed to fight Tony Kelly, who falls out. He's supposed to fight Ronnie Lawrence. He's supposed to fight Mana Martinez. He's supposed to fight Raoni Barcelos. He gets cited to Kubrat Rakhmonov on short notice. And listen, I think, and we'll talk about the odds as this one goes on, but I think a lot of people, it's one of those like, hey, we really discount you based off your last performance. Trevin Jones looked like he was swimming through mud in his last fight against Rakhmonov. Couldn't get off the fence, couldn't wrestle defensively, couldn't strike, couldn't initiate his grappling, where the big question mark for me with Jones outside of the UFC, he would get taken down or he would get his back taken. He would get in all these bad positions, but most of the time he would get out and then he would get his own submission. In the fight against Rakhmonov, A, credit to him, we knew how good he was outside of the UFC. He's shown up in the UFC and looked amazing, but B, Trevin Jones looked so flat that night that it really, really made us kind of wonder, okay, Valiev, and then his fight against Bautista, were those just lucky shots that he was able to land?
I definitely don't think the Mario Bautista shot was just a lucky shot, and I do think there's a really exciting fighter with Trevin Jones, but I am starting to think that we should put him more into the, like, exciting fight of the night fight category, more than wow, you could be a future champion category. Because for Jones, his strengths are very, very apparent. He has phenomenal knockout power. He is a good offensive grappler, although I will admit, defensively, the IQ is sometimes lacking. But you worry about his weaknesses. I don't love his output against a lot of guys. And like you said, against Rakhmonov, he just seemed to step behind and he could never get out of first gear. Couldn't get much going with his striking. Couldn't get any range-finding weapons going. Couldn't get his own wrestling going. It just did leave a lot of question marks moving forward because, again, I thought Trevin Jones was on that path to, wow, we're going to be at least top 15 and we'll figure out the rest later. But now against Javid, who is such a great striker and who is going to be the bigger guy too, and I do think that really bothered Trevin Jones in his last matchup. Rakhmonov looked like he was 3 weight classes bigger than him. He was a very big guy for that weight class, or for this weight class, I should say. And I do think that he will run into a very similar issue in this matchup, because if he can't find any of those attacks that help him get into his range, he might just be a sitting duck on the outside. And the problem with Jones is he really needs to get on the inside to be able to deliver a lot of his power. And if he isn't able to get on the inside, like you said, he never has really shown the ability to get a lot off going other than the big moments in his fight.
And for Trevin Jones in that fight against Kok Rakhmonov, who took that fight on short notice, Kok Rakhmonov missed weight at 138. For Javid Basharat, this is where I like to get down and dirty. So we have a very interesting prospect coming into the UFC. And it's always fun when you just click on the page, because if you're on Tapology, number 2 bantamweight, UK and Ireland. Number 1, Jack Cartwright. Why doesn't he fight more? Why does he shave all of his head, but he leaves that little bit on the back? Your Cage Warriors champion. So for Javid, he's fought for umpteen different promotions in his young MMA career. And when I watch him fight, and I know it's a cheap comparison, but it is true, I look at him and I look at the way that Anthony Pettis is kind of taking some moments off and then throwing really flashy stuff. Javid Basharat will fight like that. He'll throw a spinning wheel kick and then land in a different stance and start throwing some more output. It is a lot of fun. It is a lot of flash and flair. 11-0, 7 different promotions since making his pro debut back in 2016. A lone fight as an amateur. You look at the level of competition,
Not good.
All of his wins are by finish. 5 of them by knockout, 6 of them by submission. 8 in the first round, 2 in the second round, 1 in the third round. And if you go back through, not the best level of competition. He 45-59 if we really do add it
Terrible.
up. And if you look at it, the win that he had over Alexander Bezkoraviani over with Octagon, his 11-1 was assault 11-1.
Suspect.
It was Windsor Salt at its finest. So it really is tricky when you want to look at that, but you have to at least piece together the ways that he's able to win. So I'm going to work from top fight back, but he takes on Oran Kalon over with Contender Series, that one back in October. In that fight, he is a favorite to win it. Now, it says it's at a catchweight. That's because Oran missed weight for that one, and Oran also called him a dirty, dirty name before that fight, and it was the meanest thing ever. You shouldn't do that. Oran showed up at 138 and looked like a bag of milk, and he looked terrible, and he couldn't get going, and credit where it's due for Javid, he was really able to get flowing early in that one. He got mean. He ends up getting a third-round guillotine choke in that one. Oran was done in that third round, like completely done. He was busted open. The second round, first round, like you could have had some 10-8s in there too. Then you go back to the fight against Alexander Berezkoviani over with Octagon. And again, if we're making some notes, the referee looked like what Keith Peterson's going to look like in 15 years, but with a beard. So kudos to him. There was a point there where Javid gets him down, and he kind of pulls up on his shoulders, goes to land a knee, hits the body, and then the referee goes, whoa, 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 knee to the head. And the corner yells, no, it was to the body. And the referee goes, oh, okay, I guess let's just reset this position. Javid's able to go in there. He ends up getting a Darce choke out of it. But if you look at all of these fights, the fight against Nicholas Savio that you can find from Contenders Norwich 29, that one is over on Fight Plus. So glad I had Fight TV Plus so I could watch that. But in that one, he drops him, gets it down to the mat, and it finishes. The best part about Javid, he switches stances a lot. He's very fluid with that. Moves around, a lot of pitter-patter. And he's like another fighter that we have early on in this card in Azamat Murzakanov, in the fact that very light on his feet, knows exactly when to pick his shots, and when he throws in combination, there's a ton of power behind what he's got in his hands.
I think he's going to struggle at the UFC level, if I'm being completely honest, because I do really call into question his level of competition, and that was something that was apparent going back and watching it. Like Jeremiah Wells, I just keep on remembering when we brought this up about him. Go back and watch his fights in the regional scene, and you actually see the level of competition. You're like, wow, those guys are not impressing me whatsoever. Javid has a lot of similarities with that, and I'm really glad you brought up his fight on Octagon, because that was the first thing I was going to say. You might look at his Tapology page and think, wow, he beat a guy who was 11-1. That looks really good. Not at all. That guy did not look good in the fight whatsoever. And I do think that this is a monumental opportunity for Javid. Like, if he can beat Trevin Jones, who at one point I thought was a borderline top 15 guy, and hey, he might get back to that point in the future. He could look really good this weekend and completely change my opinion. I'm very open to that. But Jones has at least proven to us that his record might not be great, but I'd rather someone not have a great record against a really high level of competition than someone who's just breezed through their whole entire MMA career and never faced adversity once in their whole entire life. It was like my Cyril Gahn point, and I thought Volkov made him face enough adversity in their fight, but I was wrong. We saw what happened when he was on the receiving end of a lot of takedowns, and he just didn't know what to do. The moment was almost a little bit too big for him. I'm not saying Javid's going to have big, UFC jitters, and that's why he's going to lose, but I think the step up from Fighting Orion to Trevin Jones is going to be a really big wake-up call for him, and I do expect Jones to get a win. Although, this is really important for Trevin Jones' career, too. I cannot understate that. Again, he went from bright prospect, who we do have question marks about, to, wow, this guy really is a good prospect. Now we're left shaking our heads after that Kakrak-Mano fight. I think this is a really important one for him.
And if you look at it for the man himself, Javid Basharat, two big things for him. I mean, he walked out in that Octagon performance to How We Do by 50 Cent. He walked out to The Game before that, so... what 50 Cent adjacent song could we get? No, they don't. But and 50 Cent hanging from like his
that was
feet
cool
at the Super Bowl. 50 Cent still doing the damn thing. Chemin du Roi at the old Bellator events. They haven't been doing that lately. But the odds for this fight: Jones open to plus 150. He's a plus 125. Underdog Basharat open to minus 175. He's a minus 150 right now. And if we have a look at the Tapology votes, I'm gonna say over under 70% Trevin Jones, the more well-known fighter on Tapology. I would think. And no, the opposite. 524 total votes, 76% Basharat, 28% by decision, 57% by submission. For the 24% that have Jones, 35% by decision, 54% by knockout. Folks,
I'm fine if
I breezed through these fights. I've had a little bit of fun talking about Javid Basharat's last few fights. His fight against Nicolas Savio 2 years ago against a guy who's 2-2 that they brought in from Brazil to lose in England. He missed weight, and then they let him cut the extra weight. He made weight. Couldn't understand what they were saying. That's what the broadcast said. Didn't speak any English. And in that fight, Savio closes distance, hits him with a good combination, and then you have the man himself. Yeah, in head and arm position, Javid, able to go in there, look really good. Now, Javid got caught in a couple knee bars on the way in, so suffer for his troubles. Again, in the fight against, and we talked about it, the last one, almost an illegal knee. He gets the win, but it's a padded 11-1. And I go through it. It hasn't been the greatest level of competition. I haven't seen it against the greatest level of guys. I love the leg kick. It stings. It's great. He has one of the better leg kicks of a prospect that I've seen lately. That can cause a guy like Trevin Jones, who can stand back and still have that lead leg out there. He's susceptible to getting kicked. I get it. But I like Trevin Jones in this fight as an underdog. I mean, to me, I love Javid, the prospect. I love the head movement. I love the stance switches. I love the Taekwondo background that he has. I have to see it. So this is a prove-it-to-me fight for Javid. And when I see Trevin Jones, the underdog, I got to go with him here.
I think Trevin Jones is going to finish this fight and look really good. I really do. For Basharat, like, maybe there is a bright future for him out there, but again, based on his body of work, this is a big step up. So maybe he can show me something he hasn't shown yet in his career, but I do like Trevin Jones.
Watch out for it if you're doing the tape study. The fact that when some people start to try and land combinations against Javid, when he's got them pressured, he does the Alistair Overeem where he just kind of cuts, runs away, resets, and figures things back out. So a little bit of a comparable there, but let us know down below in the comments section if you have the man himself making the UFC debut, the Snow Leopard, Javid Basharat, or if you're going with 5-star Trevin Jones in the underdog role. A big-time fight, especially for this loaded bantamweight division. We get some big-time fights left on this card, so keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.